beautiful day in Sequatchie Valley. We're here celebrating Tennessee, Sequatchie Valley, but we're also celebrating 250 years of America. We've begun a tour across the state. We're going to all 95 counties, and Maria and I to celebrate the greatness of Tennessee as it contributes to the greatness of America. So it's a beautiful day in this beautiful part of the state. We're proud to be here. Questions?
Why?
I was hoping you could talk about the Rural Health Transformation Fund. I know y'all just submitted your application. You said this is maybe the most important thing y'all are working on right now. Like more specifics about what you want to use that for, projects, and like where's the need the greatest?
Well, as you know, the rural communities in Tennessee have been a focus of our administration. In fact, when I came into office, the very first executive order required all of state government to provide a plan, a strategic plan for rural Tennessee. So the rural health transformation funding that's coming available from the federal government is incredibly important to us because it will be used to strengthen healthcare access to rural Tennesseans. And we all know that rural hospitals have struggled for any number of reasons. Access to health care is challenging in rural communities, but we're committed to making sure that Tennesseans are served, even in our rural communities, for excellent health care. This Transformation Act and this funding that will come available it's very exciting. It's competitive, and we have put in a grant, an application for that competitive grant. We're real excited about the prospects that we have to be served by this funding. It will assist hospitals in rural communities. It will assist technology development in rural communities. It will deregulate a piece of the healthcare system in rural communities. All of that to provide more healthcare to people that live in rural Tennessee.
Did y'all have any specific projects, especially related to maybe maternal health and obstetrics and the loss of labor and delivery services in Tennessee?
We did not make specific requests for projects, but we, in our proposal, talked broadly about the areas of health that we want to serve. And certainly maternal health is an area that is important and will be a part of our final plans should we get the funding.
How important is it to highlight small towns like this and landmarks like Dunlap in such a statewide effort?
You know, when from the very beginning, I've said that what happens in rural Tennessee matters to every Tennessean. Rural communities like this are, connected to our cities, to our large cities and our large towns. What happens here really does matter. It's why we wrote the first EO in our administration to serve rural Tennessee. It's why we have focused on rural economic development. We've cut our distressed counties in half since we came into office because of this focus. Look, small businesses are the backbone of the economy in our state. We have a very strong economy, but it's built on the backs of small business. And so celebrating communities like this one, small businesses that exist in this beautiful valley, it's a part of what has made Tennessee lead in this country.
Could you talk a little bit about the issue of SNAP benefits? And it's now been announced by the State Department of Human Services that the partial benefits for November will start being issued to Tennesseans. Can you talk a little bit about how that will look in the rest of the month?
So we made an application for SNAP benefits, partial SNAP benefits. We made that application yesterday because the night before yesterday, the Senate had voted, and we've long said this is a federal problem. They need to solve it in Washington, D.C. They need to open the government back up. Tennesseans have paid their taxes to the federal government to pay for these SNAP benefits for Tennesseans. Tennesseans deserved to get them, and the federal government was shut down. Now it appears that the government's going to be opened up. The Senate voted on Monday night. The House will vote either today or tomorrow. But we went ahead and made application for partial payments yesterday after the Senate vote. Those cards have been loaded. My understanding is that beneficiaries have gotten a partial payment of their SNAP benefits, and those will fully be refunded and loaded onto the cards by, we hope, Monday.
And we could get an answer on if the shutdown ends very soon, but if not, will there have to be a similar process if this goes into another month?
Difficult to know what happens if it doesn't open back up. There have been, uncertainties with this from the minute it became evident that the government wasn't going to open. So I can't speculate on what would happen from the federal government, but let's just hope they open up federal government. I think they're going to.
I know that you're working on putting forward the next state budget, and I watched the state funding board presentations from 2 weeks ago. Mary Beth Thomas from the sports wagering revenue presented about concerns around prediction markets, kind of taking away some of the revenue from the sports wagering revenue that the state gets. And I'm curious because I know that revenue works into the Education Freedom Scholarship Program, which you have said that you're hoping to expand. If you've thought about how those losses might affect the funding for that and other sources. And
I think what you heard was that money from the lottery was reducing while sports wagering was increasing.
so there's the introduction of there's prediction markets, which are regulated at the federal level and not the state level. And so the state doesn't get any revenue on those, but they're arguably, ostensibly sports bets. And so they have been taking away,
From the proposed sports betting
from the sports
revenue
betting revenue that you do have, which
Yeah.
I know is, it's worked into the legislation and of how the Education Freedom Scholarship Program is funded. And so I'm just wondering if, there is, a depletion in that, how that might look like, and if you're looking at other sources of revenue to take that place.
The broad answer is that we look at all of those sources of revenues and believe that we have the revenues necessary to move forward with the plan as it's designed. We do anticipate elevated revenues in sports betting, flat revenues in lottery spending. That impacts, or that is something that we have to consider with respect to Hope scholarships and also facilities funding in the Education Freedom Scholarship legislation. All of that to say, it's complicated. We are watching those numbers very closely, along with the revenues for the overall state, and that's really how we'll make decisions about how much money to put into TISA, for example, for the public school funding, how much money to put into an expansion of Education Freedom, kind of what the budget process will inform us. The information from that will be used to make decisions about just where and how much money we put into which bucket. I do desire, well, we are committed to funding the public schools, and the public school formula will be expanded through TISA. Also have a strong desire to expand the Education Freedom Scholarships. We believe we'll be able to do both.
Also, kind of going off of that with the Education Freedom Act, in its time being used in the state, have you guys been able to notice maybe things that are working for students and families, and maybe things you might need to revisit if there is an expansion?
Well, it has just begun, so there's not a lot of data yet that has much time attached to it. What we do know is that there was a huge demand for these scholarships, much more so than we even anticipated in the first couple of hours. We've had over 40,000 scholarship applications for 20,000 scholarships, which tells us that there is a great demand for this, and we should work to meet that demand. That's the reason I believe we ought to expand scholarships this year, and I think the General Assembly leadership has expressed a desire to do so as well. We will obviously watch the data and see what impacts it has. The biggest impact for me is that parents get to decide. Parents who otherwise previously didn't have that choice or option for their kid, they now have it. And I think there's no one better to decide the educational options for their children than those who raise those kids. And we know for certain that that's happening, and I'm really grateful for that.
Good time for one or two more.
I have like one along the lines of the budget hearings.
Yeah.
So Commissioner Dunn had mentioned that he has a $9 million request for the health department primary care services, saying that uninsured rates are going up. They might go up even more if this subsidy thing doesn't get sorted out. And so the safety net's already struggling to keep up. And, you know, what are y'all doing about that? Do you have plans, any kind of backstop for if the subsidies go away? And then also, what do you have to say to these uninsured Tennesseans who either might lose coverage because of that or never got coverage because we didn't expand Medicaid?
I think that we will know much more about these subsidies and these enhanced tax credit subsidies and the impact that that'll have on Tennesseans before the budget has to be finalized. We've put money into the safety net year on year. In fact, I asked you, if you watched that, you saw me asking questions. What do we currently have in recurring dollars? How much are you requesting? How many more people will that serve? Making sure that all Tennesseans have access is really important, and especially those who are uninsured or underinsured, providing services for them through safety net, for example, through an expansion of benefits through the shared savings that we get from TennCare. Those are all ways that we provide more and better services both to our Medicaid population and to those who are either on the exchange or uninsured. So look, healthcare is a very challenging situation. We want to make sure that Tennesseans have as much access as possible, and we'll know a whole lot more the next couple of months, and that'll actually inform what our final budget looks like. If people lose coverage, then we're going to be leaning into ways that we can expand access for them otherwise.
What kind of ways are you all
The
considering?
healthcare safety net's a perfect example of that, and funding for our health clinics that through the Department of Health that are across the state. So many people that are uninsured receive primary care through the health clinic, the local health clinic, and to the degree that we can expand services in those clinics, the uninsured have access to more services there, and the clinics that serve them through the healthcare safety net.
There's
more
still
quick one.
No appetite to take federal dollars to expand to that gap population that doesn't qualify for subsidies and doesn't qualify for TennCare as is?
Well, I think, is your question to take federal dollars to do that?
Yeah, just like a more traditional Medicaid expansion to get that gap population that we've never really been able to get covered.
Well, I think one of the things we learned is that Medicaid expansion, the states that expanded Medicaid once the new rules came out, are in deep trouble financially. It was because the federal government has changed their match for those who expanded Medicaid. It's going to put states in a significant budget bind, and there's a much better way to do that than to expand into that population. We should serve them in other ways. That's exactly what we're talking about, is what are the ways we can serve them when they either have premiums they can't afford on the exchange and become uninsured, or they've been uninsured from the beginning. There are ways to serve them, and we should look to expand those.
All right, that's all we have time for, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.